The most important button in your truck isn't the one that starts it. It's a button sitting within reach of your right hand that most owners have decided doesn't apply to them because they aren't hauling anything. Does your truck hunt between gears going up a long hill? Does it drop down, climb back up, then drop down again like it can't make up its mind? Does the shift into fourth feel soft and drawn out, like the truck is thinking about it before it commits? I've spent more than 20 years under trucks, and I've dropped the pan on more automatic transmissions than I can count. Every single one of them told me the same story about heat. Here's the part nobody explains at the dealership. That button was never really about towing. It's a heat control, and it's working for you whether there's a trailer behind you or not. Every grade you climb, every stoplight you pull away from, every mountain pass you descend with your foot riding the brake, the damage happens right there. The transmission in your F-150 or your Silverado has one real enemy, and it isn't mileage, it's temperature. Inside that case are clutch packs, stacks of friction discs that squeeze together to lock a gear. When they're fully clamped, they turn as one solid piece and generate almost no heat at all. The heat comes from the in-between moment. During a shift, those discs slip against each other for a fraction of a second before they lock, and that slip is pure friction. Stretch that slip out and you're grinding friction material off the discs and dumping the heat straight into the fluid. Then there's the torque converter, the fluid coupling between your engine and your transmission. When it's unlocked, the engine and the transmission are spinning at different speeds and churning fluid between them, and churning fluid makes heat faster than almost anything else in the drivetrain. That's the mechanism. Now look at what a truck actually does on a long grade in normal drive mode. The truck loses a little speed, the transmission drops a gear, the converter unlocks, engine speed climbs. A few seconds later, it decides it has enough momentum, shifts back up, locks the converter, then loses speed again and repeats the whole cycle. Every one of those cycles is a slip event. On a 10-mile climb outside Asheville, North Carolina, that's not a handful of shifts, that's dozens of them, back to back, with no cool down in between. Transmission fluid does more than lubricate. It carries heat out to the cooler, and it holds a specific friction property that lets the clutch discs grab cleanly instead of glazing over. Cook it, and both of those jobs fall apart. There's an old rule that's been repeated in transmission shops for decades. Every 20 degrees you climb above about 175 cuts the useful life of that fluid roughly in half. At 240 degrees, you aren't damaging the transmission someday. You're damaging it that afternoon. Here's what they don't want you thinking about too hard. The shift calibration that came in your truck wasn't written to make the transmission last. It was written to make the truck feel smooth in a test drive and to post a competitive number on the window sticker. A soft, drawn-out shift feels expensive and refined to a buyer sitting in a showroom, and a transmission that stays in the tallest possible gear returns better fuel economy on paper. Both of those decisions cost you clutch life, and neither one of them was made with your 200,000-mile plan in mind. The manufacturer already knows this, which is exactly why the button exists. Press it, and the transmission computer switches to a completely different program. Line pressure comes up, which clamps the clutch packs harder and faster. Shift points move higher, so the truck holds a gear instead of hunting for the next one. The converter locks earlier and stays locked longer. Shifts get firmer, and firmer is what you want because a firm shift is a short shift, and a short shift makes almost no heat. On most trucks built in the last 15 years, that same button also turns on grade braking, which downshifts on a descent and lets the engine hold your speed instead of your brakes. So why does nobody use it? Look at what they named it. They stamped the word tow on it. That single word tells every owner who isn't pulling a trailer that the button has nothing to do with him, and it's the most effective piece of misdirection on the entire dash. That name was a marketing decision, not an engineering one. The engineers built a heat management mode, and the marketing department labeled it for the one customer who'd obviously need it. Meanwhile, the retired guy in a Tundra hauling a half-ton of gravel in the bed, the man towing nothing at all but crawling up a mountain road in 90-degree heat, and the owner running stop and go with a loaded toolbox, all three of them are generating the exact heat that button was designed to prevent, and all three drive right past it. Nobody at the dealership mentioned it during delivery because the finance office had 11 minutes with you and a warranty product to sell. Understanding the theory is one thing. What I've pulled out of truck transmissions run this way for 140,000 miles is something else entirely. And once you've seen the inside of one, you'll understand why I stopped staying quiet about this. Healthy transmission fluid comes out of the pan a clear red, and it smells like oil and nothing else. Cooked fluid comes out the color of strong coffee, and it carries a sharp burnt smell that gets into your hands and stays there through 2 washes. That smell is friction material that's no longer attached to the clutch discs. Pull the pan off a truck that spent its life hunting gears on grades, and the first thing you see is the magnet. It should have a light gray fuzz on it. Instead, it's wearing a thick black coat of paste, steel dust bound up in scorched clutch material. The filter looks like it's been dipped in tar. Take a clutch pack apart, and the discs tell you everything. A healthy friction disc has a visible grooved surface, and those grooves exist to let fluid escape so the disc can clamp down clean. A cooked one is glassy and smooth. The grooves are gone. The friction layer is polished hard, and the disc can't grab anymore. It just slides. That's when the shifting problem becomes a shifting failure. The truck flares between third and fourth, engine speed jumps for half a second with no forward push, then it bangs into gear when the pressure finally overcomes the slip. Heat does one more thing that most drivers never connect back to the transmission. Overheated fluid oxidizes and leaves behind varnish, a thin brown lacquer that coats everything it touches. That varnish builds up inside the valve body, where a dozen small spool valves have to slide freely in bores machined to within a couple thousandths of an inch. Coat those bores and the valves start sticking, so pressure arrives late. Shifts get lazier, and the whole thing accelerates itself. That's the part that gets people. The heat causes the slipping, and then the slipping causes more heat. And by the time a warning light shows up on the dash, the transmission has already been eating itself for 20,000 miles. I've dropped the pan on hundreds of half-ton trucks past 100,000 miles, and I can tell within about 10 seconds which owners lived in hilly country and never touched that button. The ones who used it looked genuinely different inside. Redder fluid, cleaner magnet, discs with the grooves still cut into them. Same mileage, same engine, same road salt on the frame. That's not a theory I read somewhere. That's a pattern I've watched hold up across 2 decades of pans hitting the drain bucket. Next time you're out at your truck, reach down beside the shift lever or out on the end of it and actually look at that button. If the lettering is filled with dust, you have your answer about how often it's been pressed. 2 Ram 1500S came through the shop within about a month of each other, both 140,000 miles, both bought new by men who lived in the same hilly county and hauled the same yard debris and firewood in the bed. One of them pressed that button every time he loaded the truck or saw a grade coming. Out of habit, he'd picked up from a neighbor. The other one had gone 14 years believing it was a towing feature, and he wasn't a towing guy. The first truck shifted clean, held fourth without hunting, and needed nothing but a fluid and filter service. The second one came in with a shudder on light throttle and a flare on the upshift, and it needed a rebuild that ran him $4,180. Same truck, same roads, same load, one habit apart. Here's something worth checking tonight. Most trucks built after about 2011 have a transmission temperature readout buried in the driver information display, and almost nobody knows it's in there. Scroll through the menu until you find it, then watch it on your next real climb. If that number is walking past 220 and still going up, your transmission is telling you exactly what this whole video is about in its own words. Drop a comment below. Did anyone at the dealership explain that button to you when you bought your truck? Or did you find out on your own? I'd bet on the second answer for 9 out of 10 of you. Quick reminder, if this is saving you money, hit that subscribe button. It helps us keep making videos like this. That's what the wrong way costs. Here's what the right way looks like, and notice it takes less effort than what you're already doing. The rule is simple enough to remember for the rest of the time you own the truck. If the road is going up, the road is going down, or there's weight in the bed, press the button. Press it before the climb starts, not halfway up when the transmission is already hunting. The whole point is to keep the heat from ever building, and you can't unring that bell once the fluid is already at 230. On a descent, that same button gives you engine braking that holds your speed without cooking your brake pads, which means you arrive at the bottom of the pass with a transmission and a brake system that both still work. There's no penalty for leaving it on. The truck will shift a little firmer than you're used to, and that firmness is the transmission telling you it's clamping properly instead of slipping into gear. The only real cost is a small amount of fuel economy on flat highway running, and one rebuild pays for a decade of that difference. Here's the catch that gets people who do start using it. On most trucks, that mode shuts itself off every time you shut the engine down, so it doesn't carry over to the next drive. Tomorrow morning, before you pull out, press it and find the little indicator that lights up on the dash, usually a small trailer symbol or the words themselves. Learn where that light lives, because that light is the only proof you have that the mode is actually active. The second half of the fix is the fluid, and this is where the dealership advice gets genuinely dangerous. If your truck lives in hilly country or carries weight, that fluid and filter want to come out around every 60,000 miles, which runs anywhere from $180 to $320 depending on the truck and who does the work. Manufacturers who print the word lifetime next to that fluid are describing the life of the warranty, not the life of the transmission. One warning, and I mean this one. If your truck is well past 150,000 miles and has never had the fluid touched, do not let a shop put a high-pressure flush machine on it. Ask for a pan drop and a filter, which pulls out about half the fluid and none of the debris that's currently packed harmlessly in the bottom of the pan. A pressure flush on a neglected high-mileage unit can push that debris into the valve body and turn a transmission that was limping into one that isn't going home. A retired building contractor outside Spokane, Washington, brought me a 2016 Silverado 1500 at 96,000 miles with a light shudder he could feel at about 40 miles an hour. He hauled tools and gravel 5 days a week and had never once pressed that button because he'd never owned a trailer in his life. The dealer had already quoted him $4,860 for a rebuild. We dropped the pan, put in fresh fluid and a filter for $280, and I showed him where the button was and what the indicator light looked like. That truck is somewhere north of 178,000 miles now on the original transmission, and the shudder never came back. That's the entire contrast. A rebuild on a half-ton truck runs anywhere from $3,200 to $5,500 depending on the transmission and the shop, and that assumes the truck is worth putting the money into at all. For a lot of men on a fixed income, it isn't worth it. And that's the moment a paid-off truck with plenty of good years left turns into a down payment on something with a payment book attached. The button costs nothing. It has always cost nothing. It's been sitting there since the day you drove the truck home, doing nothing at all, while the transmission behind it slowly gave up its clutch material on every hill you ever climbed. The manufacturer gave you the tool and then named it in a way that guaranteed most of you would never pick it up. Press it tomorrow, then keep pressing it, and that truck has a real shot at outlasting every payment you'll ever be offered. If you want to know which transmission service actually saves a high-mileage truck and which one puts it on a tow truck the same afternoon, click the video on the left. I'll see you there.